Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. A very hearty virtual welcome on behalf of Prabha Khaitan Foundation, Ehsas Women of Mumbai, ITC Grand Central, and Lokmat. Today, India stands united in the battle against the unprecedented disaster in the form of the pandemic that threatens the world. But not too long ago, there were grave stories of violent, divisive forces at work. Where did it all stem from? And where will it lead us as a nation? Additionally, we have been grappling the quandary, should religion regulate law or should law be in the driver's seat? Why is there a chasm between popular morality and constitutional morality? Why do liberals and modernists consider triple talaq a sin while the legal minds are against criminalizing it? These and sundry other questions baffle the minds, and who better to answer than Mr. Salman Khurshid, who firmly believes that you can't reorder any society from outside. You can help only from within. A pillar of our polity, a laudable law virtuoso, and a writer of no mean repute. Mr. Khurshid redefines intellectual jugglery. From At Home in India in 1986 to the latest Visible Muslim, Invisible Citizen, he's been trying to educate and empower Indian citizenry. We are blessed today to have an interaction with him and will surely emerge enlightened. Welcome, Mr. Salman Khurshid.
Thank you very much.
I'd also like to invite Mr. Mujibur Rahman, who's an acclaimed academician and teaches at Jamia. Rahman Saab is also a literary genius and has edited many books and writes for various journals. Thank you, sir, for joining us. Thank you, audience, for taking out the time. Audience, we want this to be a very interactive session. Please raise your hands or type in the chat box whenever you have a question, and we will bring you in. Mr. Rahman, over to you for an enlightening session with the think tank, Mr. Salman Khurshid.
Thank you, Swati, for such a generous introduction. Thank you, Salman Saha, for agreeing to this conversation. And thanks to Prabha Khaitan Foundation for hosting this event. As Swati said, Salman Saha just came out with this book that has been part of the public debate in this country since last 1 year or so. The title of Visible Muslim, Invisible Citizens, published by Rupa Publication House. And he's now currently working on this book on Ayodhya. So I would like to start, I would like to request Salman Sahab to give a summary of the book in a sense that by specific or broad issues that he thinks that constitutes the central theme of the book. And then I'll try to relate it to the contemporary political developments with other important issues with respect to CAA, Shaheen Bagh, or Nizamuddin Markaz controversy, and other issues. Can I request you to go ahead and make some introductory comments?
Yeah, thank you very much, and I'm really honored that you been able to find the time to join us for this chat. I think that the book that I wrote about the invisibility or visibility of a citizen and a particular citizen belonging to a particular community, all was triggered by a series of essays that appeared in the Indian Express, which was about minority space, i.e., are the minorities in our country fully entitled with constitutional rights? Do they require to modify their life approach to, as people say, to look like someone else, to look like the majority? Should they speak a different language? Should their behavior be different? Their concerns be different? Should they not be assertive and explicit in what they believe are attributes of their religious identity, or if you like, broader cultural identity, should that be diluted towards a uniformity? I think this is a debate that was trying to find place for itself. And some of it was, I believe, worrisome, because I believe that there was a general presumption that uniformity is a good thing, against what we've always believed in diversity. We've always thought that diversity provides unity, not uniformity. But suddenly the narrative began to change into uniformity. That if you are not within the uniform structures and uniform attributes, then you are somehow doing something that is wrong. And to kill that diversity is an important national imperative. And that's why I thought I should write this book, because a lot of people thought, let's retreat, let's withdraw, let's not assert ourselves, let's not demand what we believe is an entitlement, let's make a compromise. Whereas there were obviously other people who said, this is not fair to us, this is being unfair, and pointed to various examples where institutional decisions required them to underscore or underplay their important identity features. And that's how the book got started. There are different kinds of arguments of different kinds of people. In the end, I feel, from the point that you've just mentioned, I feel that while there was for a period a kind of a retreat where people thought, let's not push our luck, let's take a low profile, let's just disappear for a while from the mainstream public discourse. Suddenly it burst out when Shaheen Bagh happened. And that also came from those quarters amongst the minority communities who were always taken for granted as being at the hinter part of public discourse, women. And everybody argued in their behalf or against them or for them, suddenly realized that women are claiming their own space. And I think the invisibility thesis was turned on its head suddenly. And that's where we are today.
Wonderful. Thanks for your comments. There is a popular perception that, of course, our founding fathers, when they came out with the Constitution, they obviously argued for equal citizenship. They argued for, not for invisibility, they argued for visibility. But the political developments of last 70 years have taken different turns. And some would argue that it's the political development of the 1980s that fundamentally altered this understanding of unity in diversity. And there was this growing demand or expectation for what you describe as uniformity or homogeneity. And those who are following it, a lot of commentators say that this has fundamentally changed after 2014 with the electoral dominance of BJP in Indian politics. So how would you agree with this formulation that this contradiction between uniformity and unity in diversity is something that is continuous, or that is interrupted at a particular point of time and it had taken this sudden turn? And in a nutshell, that has also undermined what we have understood as secular politics of India, and has created a new politics of majoritarianism in which this identity issues are articulated in a language that you mentioned: Muslim retreat, secular resistance. These are the catchy terms or phrases that you have used in analyzing it.
That's very interesting. Let me make a very sad confession. And the sad confession is that thinking people, good people, thinking people, confuse logistics or strategy with ideology. The ideology of secularism and the strategy of secularism sometimes diverged, and perhaps are necessary in terms of pragmatic or practical politics. But as long as you remain rooted in the ideology of secularism, the strategic choices you make from time to time perhaps do not hurt you permanently. But the sad confession I make is that we lost that dividing line between ideology and strategy. And we assumed that strategy was everything. And since that strategy was meeting with defeat repeatedly by a larger strategy, as it were, that it was confronting, we assume that the ideology and strategy are all bad. And suddenly this talk about you've got to be more like the rest, you have to be indulge in some kind of public display of associating yourself with the majority, etc., etc. And we really fell between two stools. If we had retained our confidence in ideology, it wouldn't have mattered that we lost in terms of strategy. Suddenly people that I respect, that people I have worked with, that people I've learned to walk in footsteps of, suddenly started saying, don't use this word secular. It brings about a lot of bad vibes and it gives the wrong impression. Use another word. Don't use the word secular. And I found once saying to someone, well, does it matter? Is secular such an important word? We can use the word liberal, but the problem is if you don't understand what the word liberal means, you just mean liberal is somebody who's a little more accommodative, whereas liberal is somebody who allows the other person and believes the other person has the right to be wrong. And therefore, switching from secularism to liberalism, we would fall again between two stools. And that's the confession I make. And I do believe that time has come for us to make a stand and say, no, let's look at our ideology, but let's reaffirm our confidence in our ideology.
Well, my follow-up question would be, at what point of time you saw this contradiction between the ideology and strategies for secularism and ideology of secular? Are there turning points? Would you be able to identify and suggest that these are the times when it happened? Because I vaguely remember an interview you gave it to probably to National Herald at some point, that it was in the 90s, early 90s. That's when you started talking to your colleagues and who said that secularism, this is not the time to talk about secularism.
Yes, I agree. I think somewhere along there, things happen. But I have to make another very sad confession. And the other sad confession is that many positions that I would argue are positions that are ideologically sound, merely because of the aesthetics of those positions, we thought that we had taken unsound positions. Only because we didn't know, and I think to this day, I say this to this day, we don't know what Mr. Rajiv Gandhi did when he brought new legislation in response to Shah Bano. Now, the simple surface position is that was regressive, that was anti-progressive, and that's what caused a massive reaction. Now, I believe that that's not the case. You can understand the legislation that was brought to be far more superior than any legislation that has been brought since then. But be that as it may, people refuse to understand. Then when we came to triple talaq, for instance, the Supreme Court, although it was a divided house in the Supreme Court, but the Supreme Court at least made one thing clear. There is no triple talaq issue in Islam as it's practiced in our country. Either because of Justice Nariman's view that it would be void and therefore non-est, or because of Justice Korean Joseph's view that I have looked at the Quran, this is not to be found anywhere. This is completely a misnomer about Islam. But again, we couldn't explain that. We couldn't appreciate that. And we ended up arguing that you can criminalize it, but don't send someone to prison. Don't make it into a cognizable offense. Don't make it something that could be misused, etc. We just lost our moral moorings. And I believe that when this kind of thing happens, you really have to think very hard where your honest and sensible position is widely misunderstood, even amongst people of your own community. And therefore, a self-consciousness develops, which drives you back and back and back till you've lost the battle. So it's the beginning. All I'm trying to do really is that we start a conversation, we lay everything threadbare, look at every possible objection, see if we have an answer, and then hope that there will be a rational and a balanced position taken.
Yeah. Some suggest, with respect to this triple talaq bill, on which you have a book, that this is in a way that India is moving towards uniform civil code. And this whole uniform civil code issue has been quite contentious, has been at the center of our political debate, national political debate, for a very, very long time. What is your interpretation of this? Do you think this is a step forward with regard to uniform civil code, or uniform civil code remains just a three-letter word whose content remains completely unknown to even the fierce advocates of it?
I think that the sad thing about this is that whether it's the issue of maintenance, which is a very specific part of Uniform Civil Code, or it's an issue of extreme political diversity. Let me just put it like that: extreme political diversity in Article 370 in Jammu and Kashmir, where a part of India, a valuable, cherished, and a beautiful part of India, because of historical circumstances, had different kinds of laws apply there, or different systems apply there. Now, of course, you can have in China, you can have one country, two systems, Hong Kong and mainland China, but we can't think of anything creative. We think that any departure from the standard or the uniform is somehow an antithesis to our patriotic and nationalist commitment, which is unfair. But unfortunately, it's happened in the discussion on 370. The discussion on Uniform Civil Code, again, I think, is a discussion in which some people take a position that is an a priori position that they believe is a good one. And some people think that this is something that will hurt them. But there is no discussion. Now, for instance, I ask people, if you have a uniform civil code in this country, will all women, including Hindu women, have an entitlement to meher? Or will nobody have an entitlement to meher? I've asked, for instance, will do-it-yourself divorce? I'm obviously truncating the whole idea. Do-it-yourself divorce now, which is becoming prevalent the world over, would also be part of Uniform Civil Code, available to everybody, as it is available today, in a sense, to only one section of the Indian society. And finally, a very poignant thing: when we die, will we all be cremated, or will we all be buried? And then people say, how does it matter? How does it matter? And I said, well, how does it matter how I get married and how you get married? How does it matter what I give to my children and what you give to your children? Similarly, it matters. It matters that I go and leave this world in a particular way, which may not be agreeable to you, and it may not be agreeable to me. Your way may not be agreeable to me. So can we first think about it? Can we first think of why diversity is important, and where diversity is important, and to what extent it's important, but using diversity as a cover to do something unreasonable or unethical or unpleasant is not something that we are defending. We would never defend it. But the onus should be on you to say what is happening is not just different, but unethical. And therefore it must go. To that extent, Uniform Civil Code is understandable. But if a person wants to live his or her life differently, why should the rest of the people have an objection?
Yeah, from your comments, what I gather is this, that obviously people of different religious community, even within the same religion, various sects have different rituals and different traditions which they want to hold up to, not necessarily mean that that's wrong or unethical. This reminds me of a very important intervention that P.V. Narasimha Rao did in 1996, while participating in the debate of 13-day governments of Mr. Bajpayee, which fell down. And Mr. Rao said this, that even within Hinduism, there are different traditions. For instance, in Andhra Pradesh, the mama marries Vanji, the maternal uncle marries niece. And you can't make it a uniform practice, or you can't abandon that. It's not easy to abandon or question that. So basically what it suggests is that if the Uniform Civil Code is taken seriously, an attempt is made to prepare a blueprint, it is plausible that majority religion or Hindus would also face enormous amount of challenge in preserving some of their traditions or various things about it. So, but somehow or other in public debate, it is being perceived that it is the Muslims who wanted to preserve their own and wanted to defy and are not going to be part of this whole effort to build this uniform code. So do you think, is it because that there hasn't been serious effort beyond rhetoric in asking or coming out with a blueprint that has led to this kind of perception, which has generated considerable amount of negativity towards Muslims' attitude towards law? Would you agree with that?
I think you've touched a very, very, very important dimension. I think the problem is about what kind of discourse have we been able to ensure in our politics. And this takes us to the idea of leadership. Who is a leader? About 3 days ago, television channels were discussing with me what had happened in the Markaz in Nizamuddin. And they asked me, would you like to say something to your community? And I said, excuse me, why? And they said, well, as a community leader, would you not like to say something to your community? And I said to them, look, I would like to speak to everyone. If I have an influence or an impact or a reach to a particular community because of my name, because of my heritage, because of my religion, because of my education, because of my profession, I would be very happy to influence them. But why are you assuming that my interest and my right and authority and my impact would only be on people who share a religion with me and not on others? I cut across many sections of society, but there may well be people who don't share my religion who have greater impact on the thinking of people of my religion, which is what has happened in the past in Indian history. But you are now putting us in slots and saying, if you are X, then you can only address X. And if you are Y, you can only address Y. Now, this is something that is a terrible thing that has happened in our public life. Why has it happened? Frankly, I don't know. I mean, there were times, and you're obviously well aware of all this, is that Pandit Nehru would make sure that Maulana Azad had a place from where he could speak. Maulana had his own stature standing and he had his own depth, but Maulana Azad still after partition required somebody to hold his hand to get him to win an election from where? Would it be Rampur? Would it be Mewat? Would it be somewhere else? Because there was a sensitive thinking majority leader who was also liked by Muslims, who felt that if we want a wholesome democracy, I will have to do this, which is what you and I know as affirmative action, as reverse discrimination, or what people see only as what is called reservation system in our country. That there has to be affirmative action in every sphere. And I believe this is what Satchar Committee had suggested. And really it was a far-reaching, very thoughtful, and a remarkable affirmative action proposal. But sadly, political circumstances drove it away.
Yeah, so essentially you are suggesting that there is a crisis in secular leadership in our country. And there is a crisis of secular thinking in our country, which is why people are looking at a political leader's religion as a big marker to whom his voice appeals. So in this context, I like to go back and you have this very interesting take on the question of Pakistan and what Pakistan has done to the Muslim identity politics and Muslim identity in India. In your book, you have this, which I'm going to read out, where you write, the imagination that caused rupture between India and Pakistan is the very imagination that can create a new reality that assumes perspective and contest on both sides, prosperity and content on both sides. So what is this imagination that you're talking about? Are you able to recall this?
Yeah, no, I see that. I see your point. I mean, this is a wild dream, and I'm sure that this dream comes in two versions. One dream that is really a nightmare, which says, let's go and subjugate this country called Pakistan, and it deserves to be subjugated because it has outlived its utility, if it ever had any. That it is unkind and uncharitable to people of Balochistan. That it is oppressive to the followers of Badshah Khan and the Pashtuns. And of course, it's a constant source of problem and pain to us. So let's subjugate it. Let's put an end to it. Now, historically, in terms of geopolitics, are we still living in such an age that could be done? The other one is that Gandhiji was supposed to walk across and say, what is it that we have done? How have we created this border between us? But Gandhiji was not allowed to live to be able to do that. But if not Gandhiji, will somebody else be able to do it one day? Not in our generation, maybe, not in our lifetimes, maybe. But is it possible that something like reunification of Germany can happen here as well? Maybe not in entirety, maybe not completely, but at least to the extent that their angst against us and our constant pain caused by them can come to an end. Is it not possible? I believe the SAARC idea must have been this. The pristine idea of SAARC must have been this, not just for India and Pakistan, but for all the SAARC countries, all the way up to Afghanistan. And if this is what the larger SAARC vision was, why could we not achieve it in smaller units to begin with, whether it's on the Bangladesh side or it's on the Pakistan side? But I do know that this is a pipe dream, is what people will say, because things are so bad that you can't really convert them from so bad to something that could be wholesome. You can apportion blame, you can decide who's to blame more for it, who's to blame less for it, etc., etc. And each one of us have our agony tales to tell. But in the end, how much we have suffered because of that partition between India and Pakistan. And how wonderful it would be if it wasn't there. I mean, look at what a great cricket team we would have had. I mean, if Imran Khan was playing for the same team as Nawab Pataudi or Gavaskar, what a team we would have had. And similarly, what a wonderful people we could have been. If it's not possible in entirety, is it possible to some extent that we be friends and work as friends together, truly trying to help each other rather than fighting each other all the time?
Yeah. You know, I totally agree with you on that, you know, particularly when one thinks of that if we could have avoided 3 wars, you know, the amount of violence and human cost and expenditure that was involved in having those wars. In fact, that would have dramatically transformed our development side. You had a very interesting explanation and in a sense an assertion. And I would like you to elaborate on that, and I'm going to read out that one. A successful Pakistan would have less reason to search for a unifying external object of hostility, and it is equally true that India must break free of its convenient obsession with a toxic Pakistan to uh, to overcome the Indo-Pak hyphen of international approach to the subcontinent. You know, would you just elaborate on this? What is it that you suggested?
I mean, I don't want to be patronizing, although it's a popular thing to do these days. But Pakistan has some very inherently deep contradictions. One contradiction resolved itself in a gory, very manner when Bangladesh broke away. But look at Sindh, look at Baluchistan, look at Pashtunistan, look at Punjab. Where is there an integrating theme in Pakistan? Where is it? And you know, to the extent, if at all, religion meant something, Islam meant something at the time of partition, Jinnah realized very quickly that it was not going to mean for a very long time, because he moved on to some other ideas, but then he didn't live to see them flourish either. Mm-hmm. So they do not have a unifying theme for themselves, and therefore they need to use an external object to unify. And they've created their military industrial complexes, etc., which are almost impossible to dismantle. We have no choice. If there is an adversary who is not a petty adversary, they also have nuclear weapons. So we have no choice but to preoccupy ourselves and to protect ourselves against the wars that they have inflicted on us and what they could do in future, but also the undeclared wars that they've inflicted on us. They've probably caused us greater damage in the undeclared wars than they have in the declared wars. And therefore, we have no choice but to protect ourselves. We have a much stronger country on our north in China, but we have a working arrangement with China where we don't need to remain so preoccupied with China, although obviously we need to take steps there as well. But this is the problem. This is the problem because of which we have kind of pawned a huge amount of our resources, which we could have used for so many wonderful things. And let me just say that in the context in which you and I are speaking today, look at what's happening to the world with COVID-19. Everything that we've thought about being angry with someone and being an enemy of someone, hasn't all of that just gone out of the window? I mean, here we are. If we don't fight together, if we don't come together, we will not survive as humanity. And can we then, therefore, after this experience, go back to being enemies again, go back to fighting our wars again, go back to hurting each other again, when we know that any time such a horrible enemy can pounce upon us anywhere in the world?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask one more follow-up questions in this regard. You know, there is this powerful rhetoric whenever, you know, there is always this doubt with respect to Muslim loyalty. And, you know, there is always this abuse, go to Pakistan. And, you know, you mentioned about it, strangely, the three popular politicians, Indian politicians who are popular in Pakistan happen to be Hindus. You know, it is Atal Bihari Vajpayee, it is Lalu Yadav, and it is Manishankar Iyer, who are more popular than any Muslim back in Pakistan. So as someone who has led a public life for such a long time, and what would be your suggestions with respect to how to confront this tide, you know, this constant skepticism about Muslim loyalty towards India? And, you know, so they're all connected to this issue of COVID-19 also, in the sense that this whole attempt to communalize, there is a lot of discussion going on how there is an attempt to communalize this particular issue. So they're all connected in certain senses. So I was wondering that what would be your take? What would be your suggestions for that?
Well, let me just say thank you to Pakistan for one thing, that none of us Muslims of India or public figures of India are popular in Pakistan. I'm deeply grateful to them that they don't make us popular. What a horrible situation we will be in if we were popular there. And we want nothing. We want nothing to seek popularity in Pakistan. It's sad, but that's the truth. people who are popular there are popular for a variety of reasons. And you've given 3 names, but I think they're popular for a variety of reasons, and one would require a whole long discussion to get into that. But the fact remains that they are a very strangely constricted, restricted society. The wonderful intellectuals who come from there, and we speak to them and we have a chance to talk to them. The artists who come and perform here, and indeed their retired civil servants and retired generals who come here on peace talks repeatedly on special NGO efforts to reach out, etc. They give a different impression of Pakistan. But the Pakistan that we deal with, the Pakistan that we see and suffer every day, is completely different. So, are they in some schizophrenic in some way that they are unable to deal with their own schizophrenia? I don't know. Now, the fact remains that people here who question the loyalty of an Indian, I think, are very sad, pathetic. They are really, really pathetic. It shows their intellectual bankruptcy, nothing else. I mean, to say that they are vile people, they hate and they do this and do that, is unnecessary. They just are mentally, intellectually bankrupt. And what a sad thing that mentally, intellectually bankrupt people should get into positions of power and of authority and of opportunity to build opinion. Sometimes assisted by the media itself. So how can we commercialize morality in this manner is a big question that I keep asking myself, but I have no answers, honestly.
Citizenship debate, I just want to move out of it. This whole citizenship debate is going to be part of Indian politics for a long time, it looks like. As the way that things have evolved, the politics has developed, it looks like that the present regime is unwilling to move an inch and is going to stand by this. On the other hand, you have all this protest symbolized by Shahin Bagh protest movement. So I was wondering what would be, on the surface of it, Shahin Bagh has not been able to force the government to amend the Citizenship Act. And I don't think that the government is going to amend that. Then what are the positive and negatives that come out of Shahin Bagh, and what is its implication for the visibility and invisibility dimensions of the Muslim politics? Would it be possible to?
Well, for one thing, I believe that anyone who cherishes freedom of expression, of dissent, of point of view, of organization, anyone who cherishes any of these would believe that Shahin Bagh is a landmark in the history of Indian constitutional law. And I hope that the constitutional institutions, including the Supreme Court, will see it in that perspective and not just see it as an ordinary protest by some misguided people, as it's often been described. But I think horrible things are going on. I mean, a lot of people who I believe were completely honest in their approach in Shahin Bagh are being hounded up by the police for all kinds of allegations, which hopefully will turn out to be untrue. If there is somebody who is at fault, nobody says that the law should not take its own course. But to dub the entire movement as a movement that is regressive or a movement that questions patriotic commitments, I think is completely absurd. But we don't know where it'll go. This was a movement that had no leaders, and it's still not thrown up any leaders. There are people who are affected, but there are no leaders. And where would a movement like this go in the future? I mean, movements in the past in the world have never come across something like COVID-19. They lost to COVID-19. They didn't lose to the police. They lost to the COVID-19. And lost in the sense that they joined the fight against COVID-19 and put the fight against CAA at the back. And I think that's the right thing for them to have done. Now let us see, we win our fight against COVID-19. Hopefully there'll be a different government after COVID-19. When I say different, I mean government that thinks differently. And hopefully via medias will be found. They must be via medias. We can't go on in this unwholesome fashion indefinitely in this country. Something must give way, something must happen, and I sincerely pray and hope that it will happen. It'll be a new generation of leaders, maybe new political movements, maybe new alliances will happen, but something will give way. I cannot believe that nature will not find an answer.
You know, one of the aspects of Muslim identity politics has been this whole issue of Muslim backwardness, and you mentioned about Sachar report. But Muslim backwardness has been an enduring theme of Indian politics for a very long time. And you know, you do mention in your book that the community also should make an effort to come out of its own morass. And I was wondering, what are your thoughts with regard to this? What do you think is the internal problem of the community? Is there something called an internal problem of the community as such?
I tell you, this is a bit mischievous, but it's the truth. There are any number of people in the Muslim community across the country who are doing remarkable work to lift the community by its boots. Universities, schools, colleges, madrasas, very, very modern madrasas. People in every field, remarkably well. But what we are unable to do is to channel that into an expressive political voice. And there, the nature of first past the post has been the greatest disadvantage to us. And regional political parties that have taken on board our electoral support, but given nothing in return because they knew that our strength to ask was gone. We had given ourselves up to them because we felt that our options had run out, and they felt, well, since their options have run out, why give them an option? Don't want to run down any party right now, but that's the fact. And therefore, in that very limited band of political possibilities, we spend time pulling each other down. I mean, there is greater intensity of feeling against each other in the political realm at the top than there is in any other community. And therefore, how this will change, it's very difficult to say. But there are examples. I think there is so much that we can learn. We can learn from Jews in America. We can learn from the Sikhs in our own country. We can learn from migrant Indians in Europe, in the UK and the USA. We can learn from the Chinese coming to Southeast Asia. We can learn from so many people. And I wish that somebody would emerge as a thought leader in our community, who would not be dubbed completely as being parochial and limited to one community alone, who would have a reach and cut across other communities as well, but who would have at least a sincere support of our own community. I hope that this will happen. I can't say that it could be you or me or he or someone else, but I do believe in the nature of things. This must happen. And if we can work towards something like this without exciting too much anxiety across the other side, we will be successful. I mean, I'm talking about Sir Syed being born again. I'm talking about Maulana Azad being born again. I'm talking about Dr. Zakir Hussain being born again. We are seriously lacking in such people.
But such personality also require the sort of patronage that Sir Syed enjoyed from colonial administration. or Azad or Zakir Hussain Sahab enjoyed from people like Nehru. So there has to be somebody on the other side who should also understand, you know, that such people should play a role. Yeah,
I agree. I agree. I agree. And if this cannot happen, from the spectrum that is in power today, it can at least happen from the spectrum that is in the opposition today, right?
I hope
somebody will have to make a move.
Yeah. Let me ask the last question. Can I ask the last question?
We are, Dr. Rahman, we are running out of time. We have a very eager audience waiting.
Okay.
Can we just open the questions for the audience? Thank you, Mr. Khurshid. That was such an inspiring, intriguing talk.
All because of Dr. Rahman. Frankly, I would have been very boring, but he made it interesting.
Absolutely. And you were brave enough to express your feelings without mincing your words. You know, you have this ability to soak in the dappled cultural and social world and sensitize society at large. And I would say that hails you as the perfect thought leader and an architect of United India. So we will now open the session for the audience. I request one question per person. For the first question, Manisha, can you bring Hani Khurakiwala, please?
Hi, can I be heard?
Yeah.
Yes, you can.
Next question, we'll have Rajni Sancheti, followed by Mudit Jain.
All right.
Hi.
We can't see your video though.
Okay, 1 second. I have to be asked. I don't have the option, Swati.
It's okay, that's fine.
Okay.
Okay, go.
Okay, so I have a two-pronged question for you. So does India, okay, I know you're a lawyer, but I want you to answer this from a citizen point of view. Yeah. Does India have a moral duty to provide shelter to Muslims or minorities that have majority representation in other countries? And isn't the Hindu phobia understandable in today's time? And my second question, I know you said one, Swati, but I have a second one. Hasn't religion already been legalized in India with the Supreme Court verdict for Ayodhya, where very overriding facts were kept aside for the majority sort of appeasement, you know, lack of a better word, in the way that the Ayodhya verdict was delivered?
All right, let me answer this. First question is about a moral duty
Does India have a moral duty? Yeah.
I think we have a moral duty. We are a country that believes in moral duties. We put morality very high, but when we start cutting corners, that becomes a problem. When we allow politics to intrude into our understanding of morality, meaning the larger morality worldwide, then we run into trouble. We have, and many countries have, I believe, the same duty to anyone who suffers anywhere in the world. It doesn't matter who they are. It doesn't matter what their beliefs are. But unfortunately, to this day, and I hold myself responsible as well, because I have been part of the system, we still don't have a law for refugees. We still haven't gone beyond the ad hoc assistance that we provide to refugees from time to time. We must be able to open our hearts and our homes to anybody who suffers anywhere, not just religious persecution, but persecution of any kind, persecution because of their sexual attributes, persecution because of their political views, persecution because they just happen to be opposed to the country, to the regime that controls their country. We must be humanistic, and that's what I think our moral duties are. As far as your second question on the Ayodhya judgment is concerned, I just want to keep it in reserve for this reason, that I'm working on a book on that. And I do believe that we must not take a simplistic view of what the Supreme Court has done. What the Supreme Court has done was not easy for them, But what they have done is not as simple as people outside believe it to be. If you think that you are a loser, how simple you believe it to be. If you think you are a winner, how simple you think it to be. I think it's a very deep, thoughtful judgment. There are issues with it, but we will talk about those issues as we go. I believe in the judgment itself, if you read it carefully, they have laid the ground and foundation for strengthening secularism in this country. Now, that might sound ironic, and that might sound somewhat pretentious, but when you read my next book, which comes out in the next few months, you will know why I'm saying this.
Just 1 second, sir. Your answer for moral duty was poetic, but little utopian, no?
No, it's not utopian. It's not utopian. When Germany and France let people from civil strife in the Middle East and in Africa come and become citizens in those countries, what are they doing? Are they the only ones who should be doing it? Why can't we be doing the same thing? Should we not have said, it's another matter that Africans don't want to come to India, but should we not have said, we will take the Africans and keep them in India? Forget about religion. It is utopian, but morality is utopian. Morality is to be something very high up. Morality can't be something that is like commerce in the marketplace.
Well said. Thank you, Mr. Khurshid. We will now begin Rajni Sacheti, followed by Mudit Jain and Ketki Bhatia. Rajni, over to you.
Should I read out Mudit Jain's question?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Mudit Jain has this question. Thank you for the distinction between unity and uniformity. My question is this difference of religion, is this difference of religion got to do with the creation of Pakistan? And can we learn from any other country which exists peacefully having different religions?
Well, I'm glad you've asked this question. I think that the largest number of countries in the world live peacefully together despite having different religions. And most of all, from our point of view, the places that we have inhabited now, we have sent migrants to the US, to the UK, to Germany, to France. In those places, we have taken not only our religion, but we've taken a separate culture. And in unicultural societies, we have converted them into plural and multicultural societies, and they've accepted it. And they give importance and obeisance to our deities and to our religious beliefs. And if they can do it, why can't we? We've run down the British enough for what they did in this country by subjugating us for a long time. But we must today also recognize that their finance minister is an Indian. Would we make a Britisher an Indian finance minister in a hurry? We won't in that much in a hurry. So wherever somebody has accommodated and opened their hearts to us, let us appreciate that, even as we remember that they treated us very badly in the past.
There is another question by Anvi Thakur.
Yes, and can we get Rajni Sacheti also? I think she's already on screen.
Yeah.
Yes.
Rajni?
Rajni, can we get Mudit?
Mudit's
Mr.
question
Mudit,
is already asked.
He typed a question.
Yeah, that's the question he asked. The one that I read.
Ketki is on. Can we have Ketki's question, please?
Is basically what happens if the Supreme Court upholds the CAA, then what? In the current sort of environment we are in, how do we, how will states prevent its implementation if they choose not to go ahead with it?
Well, frankly, if I had all the answers, I would be holding classes and telling people this is what will happen. There are enormous number of imponderables in the possibilities that will present themselves, both negative and positive, if the Supreme Court was to uphold the CAA. I'm quite confident that the Supreme Court will find some path out of it. I believe that for the Supreme Court, this will be a kind of an existential challenge, and it will come up to our expectations. But of course, it's still a matter that has to be decided. We must keep in mind that there is no place to send people who we will say are foreigners. If they can't prove that they are Indians, how will we prove that they are Afghans, or they are Pakistanis, or they are Bangladeshis, or they are Sri Lankans, or they are Chinese, or they are Nepalese? How will we prove? And why will those countries accept the proof that we give? So these are very major things for the future. And if someone thinks that this is a simple problem, it's only a matter of ticking a box and telling somebody to get out. That's not how this happens. The world is not so simple.
Yeah, sir, you're right. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Dr. Khurshid, we have two questions, which I will just read out. The question from Anvi Thakkar is, with the spike of cases in India recently, what is the message that you would like to give to the Tabligis living in this country?
Well, listen, Tabligis don't all live in this country to begin with. The headquarters of the Tablighi Jamaat is in India. They haven't been a problem to anybody in the past. I mean, they stay out of everybody's hair. They don't have a problem with other religions. They don't have a problem with other sects in Islam, etc., etc. They just mind their own business. And they are very low profile and mind their own business. I think that they've just made some very, very short-sighted decisions. Not necessarily unlawful or illegal decisions, but short-sighted decisions. And I think that those short-sighted decisions have brought them into a huge amount of flack. They should know, they should try to deal with it in the best manner possible. The first thing they need to do is to ensure that wherever their people have reached, whether they are in India or any other part of the world, they must ensure full disclosure so that efforts can be made to ensure that any infection they are carrying can be contained. I think that's the highest priority, and I can't believe that they will disagree with this.
Thank you. And the last question from Ridhima Doshi. What impact do you think COVID-19 pandemic has on the religious and social fabric of our country? Is it going to shake the deeply rooted beliefs we've been carrying on for so long?
Well, I can't imagine that we will come out unscathed in the sense that it will have no impact on the way we think, on the way we conduct our affairs, on the way we communicate with people, etc. I think all that will change. But how it will change and to what extent it will change and what will be the product of the change is very difficult to predict, but there will be change. I think people who are religious will also spend some time thinking about the context of religion in our society. I think there's going to be a lot of thinking, hopefully a lot of new good books. Can I show you a copy of the...
Thank you.
Can I show you a copy of the book, cover of the book, so that everybody can appreciate it as to what it looks like? I thought that this is an attractive cover, but please, if you find this cover anywhere, grab it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Khurshid. Hearing your words and the way you see the world and the social, political, and cultural context makes us all feel and emote similarly. To say that we are wiser and more enlightened after listening to you may seem like an absolute understated cliche, but it's true.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you very much to the Prabha Khaitan Foundation. And thank you very much, Dr. Mujib Saab, because you were so kind to give us this time. Thank you very much. All the best to you. Good luck.